Good morning and welcome. And welcome. I'm Tim Murphy. I'm the president of the Franklin Tomorrow Board, and just want to thank all of you for coming and welcome you to our Frank Talks program series. I want to just take a minute to thank our co-chairs of Frank Talks this year, Dolores Greenwald and Lynn Maddox. She's over there. We also would like to thank Vanderbilt University Office of Community Neighborhood and Government Relations. We'd like to thank West Haven and Mary Lee for hosting us here today at this great facility. And we'd like to thank Highbrow Coffee for their support this morning with the coffee. We're excited to announce a new partnership too with Renaissance Bank, and I'd like for Harrison Crabtree and Diane LeBlanc to stand. And just so you guys know, this is, I think, one of our bigger crowds. I mean, we're, I think, at about capacity, right, Mindy? Good. So again, thank you all for coming out, and I'm going to turn it over to Mindy and let her introduce our guest.
Yeah, who is that guy? I don't know that I agree. I don't know that he needs an introduction, but we'll give him one in a minute anyway. I'm going to move out of the light because that is really irritating. I'm sorry, Stephen, to move all over the place. Thanks for being here. I thought it was hysterical this morning when the Franklin Special School District tweeted out, of course there'll be school today, and they used the photo of Captain Obvious, which it is a little obvious. So we want to take the time just to tell you a little bit about Franklin Tomorrow. Most of you know who we are. We're a community visioning nonprofit. We've been in existence for over 15 years, and we work closely with the city, but our mission is to engage the community, foster collaboration, and advocate for a shared vision for the future of Franklin. And we think the citizens and others have told us that they want Franklin to be a city with a robust economy, vibrant neighborhoods, distinct character, and great people. So a lot of things that we do, we rely on the support of our partners such as Vanderbilt University and now Renaissance Bank to present Frank Talks to you, but there are ways that you can help us, and we want just to tell you a little bit about that, and we'll send this out to you later today. How many of you shop on Amazon? How many of you? Well, now, Eric, there is a way that some of that money can come back to help in the local communities, and that's if you select Franklin Tomorrow or another nonprofit as your nonprofit of choice through smile.amazon. All those deals are available. All those opportunities exist. And for anyone who signs up and makes their first purchase this week, they will triple the amount that comes back to Franklin Tomorrow. And so we're always looking for innovative ways to have funding come to us, and that's one way. Now, another thing that we do that we don't talk about a lot because it sells out so quickly is our Mayor's Cup Golf Tournament, which is set for October 3rd this year. And the tournament itself is sold out, but you can still be part of it if you participate as a whole sponsor. And so we'll send you out information, or there's a sign-up sheet out there if you want to get more information. But we just wanted to tell you a little bit about those things. The other way that you support us is through our social media channels. If you don't already follow us on Facebook, please do. If you don't already follow us on Twitter and know what our web address is, please follow us because we're constantly putting up information and want to share that with you so that we can have an engaged community. We'll be sending you information in the next month to make sure that you are registered to vote and you know what's coming up on the May primaries here in Williamson County, as well as the state primary in August and the general election in November, because we want you to be involved in your community. You don't need an introduction. What is this, like 19th time you've done this? But yeah, he is a little bit like, he drew a crowd today. It's like Garth Brooks almost, you know? When we came in, the room was set up for a songwriters night, and he didn't bring his guitar. I don't know what's up with that, but I'm going to turn it over to City Administrator Eric Stuckey.
All right, and I can sense there's a little tension in the room, a little concern. This songwriter setup, it is not city administrator songwriter night, okay? Although I have a great one about a breakup I had in high school. It's really sad, it really moves me, but another time. Well, thank you for being here, and appreciate you taking time out of your day to hear a little bit about what's going on in the city of Franklin. You know, communities are made of lots of things, and lots of things we build and do and all that kind of stuff, but the most important thing isn't a thing. It's the people, it's the relationships, and people that engage like you, and spending your time to do something like this and learn a little more about what's going on, maybe ask some questions. That's what it's all about, and thank you for doing that and being part of that. Okay, so I'm going to give you sort of a rundown of what's going on in Franklin, some key things primarily focused on some of our projects. This is kind of a cool list. And this is not a comprehensive list, but it's some of these great national recognitions we've had in just the last couple years. Pretty great. We jokingly say we've never met a top 10 list we don't like, but there's some good things on there. Money Magazine says we're the #2 best place to live in the South, #4 in the country. That came out this last fall. Just to give you some retrospective on that, in 2010, we're around number 62. 2012, they do it every couple years, so it's a little sporadic. Then we went to number 50, we went to number 41, and this last fall, number 4. So that's pretty amazing progress and a pretty nice recognition. And Money Magazine's sort of you see a lot of top 10s lists and best places kind of lists, but Money Magazine's like the gold standard. They started it about 30 years ago, and they've been doing it a long time. And so that's something we put some weight in. USA Today said we're one of the top 50 livable cities, too, in the last couple months. Number 8 as a place to raise a family. Lots of good lists on there. Some website did say we were number 2 snobbiest city in Tennessee, which I took personally. I wanted to go take that. Whoever created that, it's probably a guy on a website, in his basement somewhere. But I wanted to go take him to lunch and help win him over, but we'll see. We'll try to track him down. But those are all nice things. But they also represent and translate into some of what Mindy was talking about leading into this. We want to have an economically vibrant, a desirable city, and we see some of that in some other measures. U.S. Census Bureau recently listed the top growing cities over 50,000. We were number 19 on that list. Murfreesboro was number 13 on that list. The rest of that list was like mainly Texas cities and maybe 1 or 2 in California when you look at the top 20. We were about 12 or 13 on that list a couple years ago, so we've slid down that list a little bit, but still that's something as well. Job growth in our community has been incredible. 5 out of the last 6 quarters, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we have led the country in job growth. And they're good jobs. They're not just any jobs, they're good jobs. So those are all really good things we're proud of. Significant investment in the community. Last year, 2017, we had $819 million of permitted development in our community. So those aren't just, I'm planning to do something, I might do something. Those are people pulling permits and building stuff, starting things. When you roll it back to 16, that number was around $775 million. So in 2 years, just a tick under $1.6 billion in actual permitted development happening in our community. So those are great things, but those are also create some challenges. So those are a real vote of confidence in our community, but we want to make sure they don't adversely affect quality of life, and we try to work with those and take advantage of the opportunities that they bring us in maintaining quality of life. So let's take a look at what we're doing. Well, this gives you a little bit of the pipeline. It's not ending, okay? This is from the Williamson Inc., their economic development pipeline. They've got 36 active projects that could mean somewhere around 16,000 jobs and a space requirement, office space need of somewhere around 2.6 million square feet. Okay, those aren't all going to happen. Take a deep breath. But that's a lot. And that's a pretty consistent. I update this slide from time to time for various things, and it is remarkable how consistent that is in terms of the level of interest in our community. And they aren't the same projects, believe me. So some of them come through, some of them don't. But again, a vote of confidence in the quality of our community as a desirable place to live, to work, to raise your family. Okay, so Franklin's a special community. We all know that. But it also has a lot of the same things going for it that a lot of places across the country do. So why has Franklin been successful? There are a lot of reasons, but I would submit to you one of the primary reasons is this is a community that has taken planning and forward thinking very seriously for many years. So it respects quality of life. It tries to look at what fits the character of the community. It may not be the same old, but does it fit who we are? And so that's not an accident. And so it's our responsibility for the next generation and generation after that to do that same kind of planning and thinking. And there's been no shortage of that going on at the City of Franklin. I'm just going to run down these really quick and tell you what they are. But these are all planning initiatives in just the last few years and things that remain in front of us and guide what we do. Our overall strategic plan called Franklin Forward was formulated around 2013. It is a 30-year outlook in terms of who we are as a community and our primary guiding principles about what we want to be as a community. We have backed that up with lots of data to measure how we're doing. It's good enough to lay goals out, but we want to have a lot of specific measures that say how are we really doing. There's somewhere around 65 different measures that touch on different aspects of that strategic plan, and you can go check them all out. Performance.franklintn.gov has a dynamic measurement profile. It's called an open data platform, and you can look at all those different measures for yourself. You can even sort of manipulate them and look at different periods of time, different combinations of information. So that's there for you. We really want that. Accountability is important to us. Some other things I'll just touch on. Comprehensive Transportation Plan, recently adopted, linked transportation and land use together in that planning effort, which is really important. Not something that a lot of communities do, but really important to do. We did that. We also broadened it beyond just our major roadways. We looked at other transportation and transit issues that touch on how we function as a community. So we've tried to take a broader perspective around transportation along with linking it to land use. The land use plan update, which is also a related topic and grew from that, and we've updated that with Envision Franklin, which helps guide what we do in terms of land use. Also provides a lot more specific guidance around what land use should be in our undeveloped areas or other sections of the community. And we think that really helps us give something to folks who want to develop land and have a meaningful conversation about the community's vision and how it fits with the broader community right from the outset. Parks Master Plan, a 10-year plus look at our parks needs across the community. Integrated Water Resource Plan, the first of its kind in the state of Tennessee, a 30-year outlook at everything water. Drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, all of it. And the primary centerpiece of that is how we impact the Harpeth River. We modeled it extensively. It's very much based in the science of the river and how it works. And so that's a guiding document for us. We continue to work on additional studies with Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and US EPA and doing an additional study of the river, and that will guide also what we do. Financial policies and benchmarks, lots of those in place, have been in place for many years and help guide us. We have a AAA bond rating from both Standard & Poor's and Moody's, which puts us probably in about the top 100 of cities across the country. And then our capital investment program we'll talk a lot about in just a little bit. And then public safety is a key part of what we do. About half of our general fund budget. We have a fully accredited police department with flagship status, meaning we're rated top in that accreditation process. A fire department with an ISO rating of #1, which puts us in the top 0.5% of the fire departments and fire districts across the United States. So that's at the backbone of what we do and guides what we do. Okay, so capital projects and infrastructure are critical to what we're about, especially with the kind of growth and the challenges that we have. And we have not been shy about getting in there and doing projects. I know people always want to see things happen faster. I'm with you. I feel the same way. But when you take a step back and look at what has been done in just the last 5 years, $167 million of capital investment in our community. About 84% of that has been in the transportation realm. So that's an important part, and it's not stopping, it's picking up. And I'm going to talk about some more of those projects, and that's what I really want to do in the prepared part of this presentation today, is run down the key projects that are going on in the community. Okay, so this is just the transportation projects, and this may be a little hard to see. Lots of little red lines and dots across the city, but that's the 145 million or so of transportation projects that have been done in the last 5 years. So, one of the things the board did 2 years ago, 2 budgets ago, was dedicated a dime of property tax towards what we call Invest Franklin, which was targeted 7 cents of that towards doing capital improvements in major infrastructure projects to help make sure we're maintaining quality of life. And so what we did in conjunction with that is took a 10-year outlook of what our capital project needs are. Staff identified, working with lots of different partners, about 120 different projects that could be impactful and important over the next 10 years in our community. That totaled well over $370 million, a lot. Probably not stuff we can all do on our own, for sure, but wanted to make sure we laid out an important and helpful menu to our community. We also weighted those ourselves and put them in tiers based on its impact in the community, its alignment with our strategic plan, its opportunity to leverage other dollars, whether it's federal, state, or other partners. And so that helped shape a menu with some tiers and guidance for the board, and then the board weighed in and looked at what the needs were in the community, where the dollars, and tried to be responsible with how far we go with committing dollars in each stage. And from that, we had our tier one, what we call tier one projects, and identified about $74 million worth of projects that touch, again, largely on transportation, but a group of projects. And I'm going to give you a quick update on where all of those are. I'm going to try to go through in about a minute each and give you a quick thing on those. The ones that you will not get a direct update are sidewalk gaps, because there's lots of different projects across the community. Roughly $250,000 a year for the next 5 years to help fill in gaps where it'll help people connect a neighborhood to a school or to a shopping area, to a park. And you'll see some of those getting ticked off different places, and some of them are literally a block, and some of them are a little larger in scale, but those are ones that we are continuing to work on. The other one you won't see is the $4.6 million public safety communications system. What we have done in partnership with the county and Brentwood have worked together on a combined public safety radio system. And that is something that is built off of the existing Franklin radio system, but will provide service across the county and also link into the Metro Davidson County public safety radio system. So we're each other's backup, and we have a link between us and Metro for public safety services, which is critical if we're ever in a major incident of any kind. So that's a project that's moving forward, and you'll see significant progress, and hopefully it's operational by the end of this year. All right, so I'm going to give you a quick rundown of each of these projects, where it's at, and try to cover those, and then I'll open it up for questions or anything else you all have. Okay, so here's McEwen. This is what we call McEwen 4. It goes from the roundabout at Cool Springs and stretches all the way out to Wilson Pike. This is about a $27.5 million project. It is a challenging project. If you've ever been on that road, it is a country road. It has very little shoulder on it. It will need to have some realignment, and to bring it into a standard that's consistent with what you see to the west of that area, heading towards to Mallory and I-65, which is a project we completed a few years ago. So it's expensive, it's complicated, it's a challenging project. We have been able to secure about $10 million of federal money to help us with the project, which is nice. The downside is federal money brings some strings and some process to it. So that added some time to the project, and that was something the board really struggled with, and we worked through, but said, hey, $10 million is essentially another major project in the community. How do we turn that down? And staff has worked really hard to try try to streamline where we can any of those elements of the project. We've already cut off about 6 to 8 months on the environmental side because we'd already done a lot of work, and so we could get the environmental complete and turned in, which it is now. And we're looking to do other things. The state has given us a green light on going ahead and submitting design earlier than normal because we've already designed this project, because we planned it initially as a local project, so there's not a lot of more design work for us to do, but we need to submit that to them. So that's getting underway, and we hope to be bidding that within 18 months. We've got to do additional work on getting design approved and go through some federal checkpoints, but we think we're about 18 months from being able to bid that project, and then that's probably a 2 to 3 year build from there. So it takes time. It's a complicated project, but that's an important one, and really an important east-west corridor in the whole county. When you look at the county overall, McEwen is really has some important connection points across the county, and then ultimately is designed to extend even further east. All right, the Southeast Park. This is a project that's underway. We've gotten a concept plan out there. The board will be talking about it again tomorrow night at the work session. So take a look there. You can go on our website and see the updated concept plan, blended together a couple different concept plans into one now that we're getting some guidance on. This is a fascinating park. It's going to be about 260 acres, and think of it as almost 3 different components or neighborhoods almost. The northern tier, which is property we just acquired, about 78 acres around Robinson Lake, will be a passive, more open space, have walking trails, have the large lake there, and be more of just a passive park. Then you come down, cross the river, and you're into the rest of the park, which will include a large neighborhood park, including Franklin's first fully inclusive playground, have a splash pad, other different components, pickleball, lots of important stuff like that. But more of a neighborhood park. And then the furthest south component will be like a sportsplex, essentially 10 large rectangular fields for football, lacrosse, rugby, all of which are growing sports, a lot of demand in the community for those. It will also help us enhance baseball at Jim Warren, because the Franklin Cowboys program will move down to the new park, and they'll give them enhanced facilities, but also allow us to expand baseball fields at Jim Warren, including a Miracle Field there as well, which is also a really cool, inclusive element. If you've been to Murfreesboro and seen theirs, it's awesome. It's really great. We just need David Price to move here and help us out. Yeah, maybe Ben Zobrist can help us or somebody. Yeah, we got some play here, Ben Zobrist has won more World Series than David Price. So, but this is a great project. And a splash pad. Yes, thank you. Yes, that's great. Lots of great elements. Dog park, just open space. It's again about 260 acres of parkland. We are reserving about 30 acres in the area right along the highway, the highest land, for a potential southern wastewater treatment plant. And that's actually what that property was bought for over 10 years ago, was for that purpose. And so we've found ways to bring other uses in place, but that ultimately is planned for that as well. So we've thought about how to interface with that function there as well. But again, we plan to have that to the board, get a concept plan approved here in the next month or so, and then move forward with final design and getting that project moving forward. Fire Station 7. We now are operating out of essentially a double wide and a garage that we've built on the southern part of the Ag Center property. When we had the tanker accident a few years ago, we learned the importance and the lack of an east-west connection except for that Paytonsville overpass in that area. The county and the city worked very closely together, and we immediately put a temporary station at the Ag Center. From there, we built a temporary station, and now we're going to build a permanent station on that side. And we sold land that had been set aside on the west side in the Berry Farms development to help pay for this as well. So pay for the development. The county, we're extending sewer service to Ag Center, and they're going to provide us with about 2.5 acres on the southern tip of the Ag Center. We are also going to co-locate the EMS function that is run by the county and the hospital out of that same fire station as well. So that's a really important location and better fits the service needs of both the city and county in that location. And that should bid in the next couple months and start construction yet this year. Franklin Road. I wish Margaret could be here. She's not. This is her personal favorite. She'd probably be out there on a bulldozer today if we'd let her. But this is an important project that'll bring some streetscape elements, but also sidewalks to connect all the way out to the factory. It'll provide a little bit of enhancement in terms of capacity. There's a little choke point in the road that'll go away, but it'll be an important improvement and also upgrade some water, sewer components that are very much aging and in need of upgrade. And that project, we are in the right-of-way acquisition is just starting. In fact, there's a community meeting on March 20th at City Hall at 6 o'clock about that very project. And starting the dialogue, we need to acquire about 44 tracts of land to help make that project happen. So the next year is going to be spent getting that done, and then hopefully a year from now it's bidding, and that's about a 2-year construction period there. So 18 months to 2 years to construct that. So again, an important project, help connect downtown out to Harlansdale for pedestrian traffic in particular. We won't have to barricade off a lane of the road when pilgrimage happens or other major events happen, so that's good. And I don't ever want to see a mom pushing a stroller on Franklin Road to go to Main Street Festival ever again. So that's a personal goal, I think, of all of us at the city to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, next one. We're enhancing some lighting at Goose Creek. There is no lighting there, and we're putting that in. The thing I like about this, do you see that number, the cost $870,000? It's now gone down because the state's going to partner with us, and that number for the city is going to only be about $350,000. So we've reduced that cost. Of course, the trade-off there is it going to take an extra year to get done because the state's got to be involved. So that will probably be about a year till that's done, but that does save us about $500,000 right there to get that project, and that'll bring lighting to that interchange and enhance that from a safety and appearance standpoint. Whoop, wow, heavy thumb on that last part. Okay, so, wow. One more, okay, man. Okay, so the one you apparently does not want you to see is the Liberty and, oh, there it is. All right, Liberty, Mallory, Royal Oaks, right by Centennial High School. That interchange is one that doesn't function great today, but it's okay. When we look at projections of future traffic, that intersection will fail big time. So what we're doing now is doing some enhancements, design enhancements for the intersection. With some of the development happening to the north, we've targeted some of those dollars to help us improve this intersection. What the plan provided for was a design and right-of-way acquisition, and we'll need to fund the construction in the next tier of projects. But we should be acquiring right-of-way here soon and have that project essentially ready to go by the end of the year. All right, so the state has been investing in our community with some major projects. Let me touch on some of those. You've got the Franklin Road project that's just the northern tip of Franklin into Brentwood. That started, last year. It's about a $27 million project. It's about a 3-year build to do that project. And the enhancements on Franklin Road into Brentwood there. Then you see Mac Hatcher, which is near and dear to all of our hearts, especially anybody who lives in this neck of the woods. That project is funded for this year. Unfortunately, the bidding has been pushed back out. Long story short, there's a change in how they use some of the land that can save the state around $3 million. So the state's going to save $3 million. But it's causing them to reclassify some land and pay a different amount for some land with one particular property owner. So that's going to either go through the courts or that's going to get done some other way. But that pushes bidding. We'd hoped to bid it this last month, but that's going to push bidding back to probably August or early fall, which we're disappointed by, but we've done our part. We've done design work, we've done redesign work, we've done about everything you can do. We've acquired land, but the state and they see an opportunity to save money. I can't criticize them too much for that, but we want to get the project going, and hopefully that'll be a bid here in the next few months by the fall and be ready to go. That's probably a 2.5-year build to get that done once they get going there. Then you see another project also funded in fiscal 2018, which is improvements to 96 East. It goes from just east of Arno Road out to Wilson Pike. Again, that's a $38 million project. We do not have timing on the bidding of that yet. It's funded in year 1 of the 3-year plan, which is this year, but we do not know exactly when that's going to be bid, but that'll widen the road, bring capacity there. All right, so, okay, so a couple other projects. Columbia Avenue, you've heard a lot about that. That's about a $20 million project. The board has identified a big picture design concept for it. Staff is working through the details of that. There's lots of specifics to work out around the pedestrian elements, how that aligns, how we realign some utilities, and how we work with access to especially businesses up and down Columbia. So that's something we'll see coming to the board here shortly and refine that, and then that'll be moving out. But that, again, is a fully non-locally funded. We're helping manage it, but it's the federal side is 80% and the state is paying 20%. So all we're doing is sort of shepherding the project, and our best guess is that's probably about 4 years out for when that actually happens, given the process and the funding. But we're trying to keep moving along on design components. The multi-use trail not far from here, we got about $1.8 million of state funding to help with that, and that'll extend the multi-use trail that is right from Carlisle to Freedom Middle School. That'll take that from Freedom Middle all the way into downtown. So that's a great project. Really brings some great connectivity to schools, to parks, and into downtown. And we're all about providing you with options. You don't always need to get in your car to get places. And if we can give you a chance to walk or ride your bike or just get out and about in that way, that's a great option for the community. That's an example of that. On the other end of 96 East, you've seen some work going on there. They'll take it from Pinkerton Park all the way out to Mac Hatcher, essentially. And that's a sidewalk project. That should be done in May. We've had a little bit of challenges with the wettest February in history. Created some delays for us, and that's actually true, I'm told. But that project continues to work, and that'll be an important connection. And then you see this cool-looking thing with all these different monitors. We call that the ITS, which is an intelligent traffic system. It's not always about pavement, folks. Sometimes it's about how those signals work. And what that does, that's about $2 million of grant funding primarily that helps us do what's called adaptive signalization. So it's not just individual signals, but it's how every signal works together, and it can actually change in real time with the actual flow of traffic. So that is a pretty quick gratification if we can get it in place. Instead of adding asphalt, which takes years, we can have systems that work smarter and help traffic move better. We did a study in Cool Springs a couple years ago, and these kind of improvements improve traffic flow something like 47% without adding an inch of asphalt, just by working a little smarter. So for a community our size, it's pretty unique to have that kind of program, but we've had great staff who've had that vision and been able to tap into grant resources to help us do that. So that's something that we hope to start that significant project later this year and have that move forward. A couple major things on the water and sewer side, the utility side of our business. Water treatment plant out on Lewisburg Pike is nearly complete. Commissioning of that whole plant starts this week. That's about a 60-day process, 2 30-day periods. And so what that is essentially all the pieces of the plant have worked and tested out individually, and now they're going to work together for 30 days with all of our experts present. And then the second 30 days, we'll pretty much operate it ourselves with the experts on call. And then after that, we're going. But it's a huge enhancement, brings state-of-the-art membrane technology to our water treatment. Elements of that plant, I was walking through there the other day, saw the dedication plaque to that building from 1968. Okay, so elements of that plant are 50 years old. And so it had an upgrade in 1994. But it needed it, and that's an important part, and that's about a third of our drinking water supply comes from that plant. So we're very fortunate to have two different supplies from the Harpeth River, and then the other 2/3 we buy treated water from the Cumberland that comes down from a wholesaler, Harpeth Valley Utility District. So that's that project, and that'll be producing water completely. And really in the next 2 months it'll already be doing it, but then be fully commissioned by May. And then the water reclamation facility up by Franklin High School, that's a huge project. We're enhancing our capacity from 12 million gallons a day to 16 million gallons a day. And also bringing, again, enhancements in terms of treatment, especially nutrient removal, which is really important when you look at what we put in the river. And I'll tell you, first of all, Franklin produces one of the best, highest quality effluents into its river of any treatment facility in the state of Tennessee. I've had multiple people tell me that from TDEC. And that's our existing plant. We're going to put additional capacity in there and capability in there to do an even better job. The other piece is, while we're adding capacity, any loading we're putting in that river will not increase. Even though we're treating more, we're going to remove more, and what goes into that river is going to be at the same levels or better than it is today. So we take that responsibility, that stewardship very, very seriously. Again, that's a project that we're actually rebidding. We received some bids on. They were very high. We've revamped some components of that that we think will help us, but it's the single most expensive project in Franklin's history. It's going to be somewhere north of $130 million, I would expect, when we get those bids by June. So we have been fortunate enough to receive a $100 million low-interest loan from the state. That saves our ratepayers about $30 million compared to what we would pay going into the bond market. So that's a huge benefit to us. Should I say anything else about that one? We have some ill-conceived legislation out there that is designed to take away that loan and try to write our permit by legislation, all of which in the name of protecting the river, supposedly. Well, I would tell you the city's been working on protecting the river for decades, but especially the last 3 or 4 years with an integrated water plan, the first of its kind in the state, and this kind of stewardship. And we work in partnership with those who want to work with us. And so what this project does, and to undercut this project is really undercutting our ability to be good stewards of the river. Because if we don't have that loan, we can't make the improvements to the plant. And I don't understand the thinking there, but it's a political game. It's not a game based on science or anything else we're doing. So we're pushing back on that. I don't think it has much of a chance, but it's ridiculous that we're having to spend our time doing that. I'll just share that with you. But anyway, that's my update. Thank you. So it is just after 10. I'll take any questions except Denise. I'm not taking any questions from Denise because she gives me a hard time all the. Now we'll take questions from Denise.
Whose ill-conceived legislation is that you're talking about, sir? If you're going to call them out, call them out.
I was trying to take the Voldemort approach, but I'll say it. Harpeth Conservancy. So they've tried to push people around at the state and locally for a number of years with litigation and publicity stunts. We try to rely on science and good hard work and partnership. So that's where that is. And a couple legislators from Davidson County have jumped on that, and we hope to sit down and talk to them some more and tell them the full story, and hopefully that'll help. But I don't think it's going anywhere, but it's frustrating.
Mayor Moore is here with us. We've also got several aldermen. I see Alderman Peterson. I see Alderman Blanton. Am I missing any of them? Mayor, do you have anything to share this morning?
Well, I appreciate that opportunity, and I think that you see why the city runs so efficiently. We have such a great staff, and we have such a great board that works together. So I like to say that we are doing a lot of planning for the future, and we're doing it collaboratively with all the departments and the board and building consensus. So we're proud of Eric. Eric does a great job leading the daily operations of the city, and the board does a great job of carrying out those visions that they have. So thanks for the opportunity.
I really did a bad thing. I didn't introduce any board members at the beginning of my talk. They teach you that the first day of city manager school. They teach you that, and I totally forgot. But in all seriousness, we have a very good board. They work very collaboratively together. They don't see everything the same way, but they really try to reach consensus where they can and really value their role in the community. And they're just community servants. That's the best way to describe them. And we city managers, we go to conferences, and believe me, we compare notes, and I'm pretty lucky, let me tell you that. Board and community-wise, this is a great, great place to be.
We've had a couple submitted questions, but we're going to go for one or two here in the audience first. So let's go right here.
Thank you. The plans are really interesting, but the one question I would have is with regard to payment. If you took a look at your current debt level now and just took a look at two timetables, 5 years out and 10 years out, what would those numbers look like in comparison to present?
I can't give you a specific number right now, but let me tell you what we do. Our policy looks at our debt loading especially, and some of the things we look at is what the bond rating agencies look at, which is our amount of debt compared per capita and compared to our overall assessed valuation. So we look at that. The capital plan I showed you uses about 60% debt and 40% pay-as-you-go capital, different capital resources that we have. So we try to balance that as best we can. But that debt affordability and trying to keep that in a manageable range is important to us. It's challenging because a lot of AAA cities are built-out cities, so they don't have the growth pressures that we do. So we've tried to look and create sort of a subset of communities that have had that are AAA and high financial standing, but have also had to deal with the real pressures of growth and demands of growth. And so we've used those as benchmarks as well. But that's one of the things, those affordability ratios and the amount of debt compared to your population and compared to your base, your property valuation base is something we look at very critically. And that financial policies that we talked about, we formed those about 9 years ago. And we updated them probably 3 or 4 times since then, just to make sure we're tracking well on that. I can get you some specific numbers, but we look at that very carefully. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, water and sewer are independent business units. It's its own standalone utility. So the ratepayers have to pay for those independently. There's no taxpayer dollars that go into that. We were able to secure debt on that, a 20-year debt at a very low interest rate. Again, saves us. It's around 1.4% compared to around a 3.3 that we would have gotten on a revenue bond in the market. So it's a huge deal for us, but that is independent. Yeah.
Jonathan has a question. I think I have enough cord to.
Well, I've heard our current administration talk about reducing that permitting and approval process from multiple years down to 1 or 2. Do you see any evidence of that in the local realm, or is it possible in the local realm?
We haven't seen it yet. I'd love to see it. The biggest thing we could do is not so much cut things out, but allow them to work more in parallel. Because my experience with working with especially federal grants, it's very much station to station. You have to do this, then you're allowed to do that. And what we've asked for on McEwen is we've said, we've already designed this. We know what we're looking at. Let us do the right-of-way acquisition in parallel with the design review. And they're right now they're indicating they're going to allow us to do that. And that's more at the state level. They're going to allow us to do that. Now, we're assuming a little bit of risk, because what if something comes out a little different and we've got to acquire a little land or tweak a design, but we're willing to take that risk. And so maybe we acquired a little bit more land than we should have, or we need to acquire a little more someplace else. But we're willing to take that risk to expedite the project 12 months. And so we've at least seen a little flexibility in that, but that's happened more at the state level. But my main critique would be allow us to do them more in parallel, empower your local governments to assume a little bit of risk, as with most things, we're closest to these projects and to the community, so we have a pretty good knowledge base. And we're going to be right more often than not. So if we're willing to assume a little bit of risk, let us do it. And then, be accountable. If there's something we got to tweak, fine. But don't make us go through this painstaking, we turn in the environmental and we have to wait for 6 months to get back what we know the answer is going to be, which is you're good. So that's the thing I would say we see from a process standpoint.
If you've lived in Franklin a long time, I don't think you ever thought you'd see big cranes down there or the change of the downtown area. Can you speak a little bit to the evolving redevelopment of downtown, including the square and the possibilities that exist for City Hall site? And then people have been asking on our submitted questions about, someone asked about O'More and that property that's 7 acres, I think. So just talk a little bit about downtown and its redevelopment and the potential there.
Sure. And you look kind of east of the square towards the river has always been sort of an overlooked part of downtown. Not so much anymore, right? Harpeth Square's moving along. Everybody, it's not going to be as tall as the crane, okay? It's going to be 3 stories with a recessed 4th story. When those cranes first went up, I got a number of questions going, how tall is that building going to be? But that's moving along. They're building the parking garage first. It's a little north of 500 parking spaces in that parking garage, which will be sort of in the center of the block and of the development. About 200 of those spaces will be available to the public. They will probably be pay for parking. They're not controlled by us. They're controlled by that owner, but they will make those available. But that project is moving, has been very carefully planned, lots of input in terms of making sure it looks and feels like Franklin, even though it's going to be pretty large, a pretty substantial building, but it's going to add 120-room boutique hotel. It's going to have apartments. It's going to have some commercial space on the first floor in terms of retail and restaurant space. So if you've seen the renderings, I think it's going to be a pretty attractive, desirable place to be, and it will extend the vibrancy of downtown to an area that hasn't really experienced much between the square and the river. Has sort of been a dead spot for us. So I think that will be a nice improvement. The other thing you see going on, I'm told the First Tennessee building will be complete by this summer. But that's going to be a great project too. It really is. And it'll bring a rooftop dining to the square. It will be very cool. Have a restaurant and bar up there. I believe they're doing very well in their lease out of the space. But the construction is taking, I think, a little longer than planned, but it's getting there. The other things, one of the things when we rated out capital projects and the board's priorities, the City Hall, or a new City Hall, was fairly high on that list. It was in the top 10. You can see it didn't make Tier 1, but it's one we're doing some looking at from a staff standpoint, largely because it's got a unique component to it. Right now, it's all one story, and it sprawls out over a good portion of a block of about 4 acres. If we go vertical and do something that looks a little more like it fits on the square, we've freed up land that can be otherwise used. So we're trying to do some master planning ourselves around how that can happen, and how maybe even you get some resources from that redevelopment project that help you pay for the City Hall. So that's the kind of thing we're trying to think through. Again, the board needs to weigh in about how we fund that and when we fund that. But that's an important project. We've put a lot of lipstick on City Hall, but it's well past its prime. I mean, it was an old mall, and it looks like an old mall in a lot of ways. I was up on top of the parking deck the other day and looked over it, and there I could count at least 38 HVAC units on the roof of that building. It's crazy. So it's time to do something about it at some point. We've I think made it so that it's workable for several years, but we need to start working towards what that solution looks like as well. On O'More, I will tell you this: Belmont is very conscious, the new owner of O'More, essentially, as they absorb the design school into the greater Belmont University structure. But they're going to have that program at their main campus. That's clear. But they also are very conscious about the importance of that property in the community, and they want to work with the community on how, in whatever way that that develops from there. Of course, it's got in the historic overlay. It's got not one but two buildings that are on the National Register. So we know that all of that needs to be protected, and good stewardship needs to be part of that. Belmont's in on that, but they're looking to, I think, look at what the next use might be and want to engage with us in those conversations. And there are a number of conversations happening at the community level, both public and private, about how to help that happen. I don't know that it's necessarily a city facility, but it's something we want to make sure we have a role in helping make sure the right use gets in that important location and those historic structures. Yes, downtown parking. So we did a study that was finished at the end of last year around parking in downtown. It's got short-term, medium-term, and long-term issues to look at about capacity, about how we use what we have now. When you look at it, the city itself, or publicly, there are about 1,300 spaces when you look at the two parking decks and what's on-street parking now, none of which is charged for. Okay, the parking lots that became pay lots are private lots. Some of them the city had lease arrangements with so they could be used for public parking, but those property owners, as is their right, chose to go ahead and go a different direction and make those pay. So the city has not gotten into the pay parking business at this point. That is an option to look at someday, but I don't know that that is someplace that we are running towards. And in fact, that's part of what makes downtown work, is having available parking options for people, and we get that. But we're also looking at, we sort of have a one-size-fits-all parking approach with the way it is done now. So we're looking at, does it make sense to have some shorter parking turnaround times, maybe instead of 4 hours, 2 hours on the downtown core surface lots, so that it serves customers more than it serves employees, get employees into parking decks and surface lots, not so much on street. Those are some of the things we're trying to work through and think about, and how we best use the spaces we have to match up with the different types of users. We've got, I think Mayor said the other day he'd heard, there's somewhere around 1,300 plus employees in downtown. So it's an employment center. So you've got that challenge for all of our businesses downtown. It's obviously a tourist attraction. It's obviously just a community resource. Our own citizens are there all the time. So we want to make sure we're hitting that. Eventually there's going to be a need to add capacity. We're looking at ways to look at quicker adds in terms of surface lots. There's probably a need for another parking deck of some kind at some time. Hopefully that could be a partnership. I don't think you would ever see just a parking deck alone developed again. I think you would see something that would be wrapped by retail space that would fit the street, kind of fit in there, and have some other uses other than just parking. I would hope that's what we do when and if that opportunity comes our way. Again, that helps pay for the structure itself. So those are the things we're looking at. We've put some proposals forward to both upgrade our ordinance, which hadn't been touched, some elements, since 1976. Look at the parking duration on the street in some locations. And we're also bringing some technology to our parking garages. You, hopefully, by Main Street Festival, you will see signs that tell you if it's full, if it's not full, how many spaces are available. When you go in, it will say there are 4 spaces on level 2. You can go up and find one of those 4 spaces. And then I'll say there are 3 spaces on level 2 because you just took one of them. So that we want to have that signage on both 2nd Avenue and 4th Avenue. We've heard the concern, and some of us have experienced it, where you go all the way to the top of 4th Avenue, nowhere to park, and you go all the way down, nowhere to park, and then you're frustrated. And so we want to eliminate that. We've actually been able to adapt our security cameras and add a few more cameras and use some software to do that. We'll be testing that by the end of this month and hopefully have signs up and have it functioning, hopefully by the end of April around Main Street Festival.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question over here, just.
Great presentation. We saw another great presentation not too long ago at City Hall about the Hill Project. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the Hill Project and the timeline there.
So the Hill, we've engaged the public, and boy, did the public respond. we just closed the survey that was online and also taken, first week of February we had a public meeting. We received over 1,100 responses on that survey. And so we're putting that all together. We'll bring it back to the board for some more discussion. And the first question is, do you want to change the land use? Because right now the land use doesn't provide for the residential options that were talked about. So that's going to be the first question. If we want to do that, then we'll initiate that, and then we'll look at some other options around the property. But that's what we need to hear first is big picture land use, what makes sense there, and then from there take steps. So I don't have it specifically scheduled, but I would expect in the next month or so, we're back in front of the board checking in. Here's the survey, here's additional information, walk through what was presented to the public, which is just 3 examples. There's obviously you can come up with many more if you want to, but it's a starting point. And we were able to get some 3D modeling done on those so we can walk people through that. And we'll probably do that with the board again, talk about what we heard from the public. And I haven't looked at the results, but I'm told it was a pretty diverse set of responses that we heard. You imagine with 1,100, we heard a lot of different ideas. So we're gonna take that into consideration and have that be part of the discussion. We typically do amendments to our land use plan on a quarterly basis, so we would try to, if that's a desire of the board, we'll fit it in to the next available slot if that works, and then look at what we do with property from there. But it's a big decision. It's an important location. It's a valuable location. It's worth probably about $2.5 million is the values we've heard about that property. So we want to make sure we're using it the best way we can. And so I don't think the board's going to rush into anything, but we're trying to make sure we're both getting public input and giving good information and helping facilitate the decision.
Let's thank Eric for his time this morning. Thank you so much. Frank Talks is a monthly lecture series, and our next lecture will be April 9th, Monday, April 9th, and we'll be at City Hall that day. And we'll be discussing and meeting with organizations that are serving those with special needs in our community. The folks from Waves will be there, as well as from High Hopes and some of our other organizations. And it'll kind of start our discussion and involvement, or enhance our discussion and involvement of this inclusive and accessible playground. Franklin Tomorrow has been taking groups and working on this for the last year, and we look forward to continuing to work in partnership with a number of other organizations and the city in making that a strong reality in the new Southeast Park, and how that will influence Jim Warren. So that'll be April 9th. Again, thank you to Vanderbilt Office of Community, Neighborhood, and Government Relations, and West Haven and Highbrow for the coffee this morning. And we look forward to seeing you on April 9th. Mark your calendars for April 24th. That's the next Breakfast with the Mayors. Thank you.